Today I'd like to talk about how can we resolve the polarization in our democracy. I realize that our country these days is in one of the most polarizing or polarized states that it has ever been in. And I wondered, how can we get both the left and the right to calm down and understand how we may be able to resolve our issue differences? I look at our democracy as a spectrum, a range. It ranges all the way from the left, socialism, to the right, to the far right, fascism, and democracy is kind of everywhere in between. I'd really like to talk to a joint session of Congress to say, I believe we can get to a point of governing again and not just being obstructionists on both sides. I'd like to tell them that a capitalistic democracy will only thrive if businesses and the people can coexist in harmony. Balancing the money going into businesses and going to the people is the only way to maintain harmony. I call this concept using money to titrate to a better democracy. Did you know that in 2017, the 2017 Taxation Reduction Act decreased the tax on businesses and the super rich, or basically those running those businesses, by approximately 12%. But over a 4-year period of time, that represents $2 trillion. Basically the money that was removed from the federal budget that supports the people and was added to the pockets of businesses and the super rich that run those businesses. I believe that all that Biden and the Democrats are trying to do is balance the amount given to businesses and to the people. Businesses need to understand that and get on board. And the Republican Party needs to understand that and get on board. Being able to work one job for a living wage is not socialism, folks, but simply the right thing to do. What can extreme polarization do when we have one side that has when the left has socialistic tendencies and the right has focused business tendencies? Well, if people get the money and the socialist left gets the majority of the votes, then socialism will prevail and our democracy will be lost. But if businesses get the money and the conservative right gets the majority of votes, then fascist regime will prevail, and again, our democracy will be lost. So how do we get to some kind of middle ground? Well, my point is, for democracy to survive, both the left and the right must participate in governing our country. When one party has lost the advantage, they must still negotiate and participate in governing. They not just become obstructionists or try to overthrow our democracy with some sinister set of plots. So what are the current sinister plots that I have seen in the last year? Well, cast doubt on our electoral system, or our electoral form of government, by claiming election fraud. Plan for and execute a democracy takeover. which we saw on January 6th. Use fraud claims to enact state laws to suppress those from voting who do not agree with your point of view. Gerrymander so that the popular vote will never again win, and only electoral college approaches will win the day. Quite frankly, with our level of technology of today, a popular vote should be the way we choose our next party that will control houses or will control our government, not some electoral college system that's from the 18th and 19th centuries. Enacting anti-abortion laws, forcing the poor into a slave class that some businesses believe they need to survive, and using the wink-wink, nod-nod control of your party so our justice system can't prosecute sinister party leaders and throw them in jail. I talked about several of these things, so I want to expound on them a little bit. What is a slave class today? We know what it was, in ancient Egypt, and we know what it was in the 17th and 18th centuries in the United States. But what does it really mean today? My definition of a slave class is those that are forced to work for $7.25 to as much as $20 per hour without benefits. And that depends on the location. If you're on the east or west coast, you're basically working for a slave. You're working as a slave laborer. If you're even close to $20 an hour. In the heartland, it's closer to the $7.25 an hour. But it basically depends on your location as to where I would place you as a slave class. Can businesses survive without having a slave class? Well, everything the Republican Party has been positioning for over the past 4 decades says they believe many businesses can't survive without a slave class, as I have identified it. And what does right to life really mean? Does right to life and blocking abortions get Republican politicians votes for being more Christian? Basically, I believe that this shouldn't even be a party policy. Nobody wants to see a fetus that a family has planned for and wants and can afford to be aborted. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. But does right to life is right to life just a fast way for a Republican Party to increase and maintain a slave class for businesses? And is that their real right to life strategy? Basically, staying in power by using Christians' protect the fetus objective when they couldn't care less about the fetus is what I believe the Republican Party has degraded to. They only care about getting votes and money from both businesses and Christians. And that's shameful and sinister. So basically, I believe that if both parties would simply get to governing, not just get to being obstructionists when they're not in the seats, it would be better for all of us. And the person who's really helped me from going from just being frustrated with this whole political scene and trying to understand how things have gotten to levels of polarization that they've gotten to these days is a historian, excuse me, called Heather Cox Richardson. She is a professor of history who maintains a daily blog and a video chat Facebook channel. She provides historical links to most of the she provides historical links to most of the comments that she makes so that we can understand and believe that what she's saying is true. The link to her Facebook page is https://www.facebook.com Heather Cox Richardson. I have also included a summary of my comments that I've made to her blog over the past year. They've helped me to kind of blow off some steam, and maybe they can help others to do the same. I hope they will prompt you to read her blog and to get some further perspective that may help you calm down. So, what is this whole thing that I've gotten used to commenting on? Basically, I started commenting to Heather Cox Richardson's blog on November 1st of 2020. And I talked about what I saw the Republican Party being degraded to, basically a fascist, neo-Nazi, racist, cult-following party. But it also, but I've also felt that it's helped me to understand where we are today in the polarization of our parties. I can't understand why Trump hasn't already been arrested, tried, convicted of treason against and trying to overthrow our democracy and replace it with a fascist regime. But it also helps me understand why the Republican Party has followed this person who to me seems to just be a liar, a cheat. He's not even a businessman. He's a person who has taken 6 of his company ventures into bankruptcy so he can pay the people, the contractors, the people, pennies on the dollar for any venture that doesn't make him millions. That's not a businessman. That's a liar, a thief. That's just a gambler. So that's how I feel. The other comments that I've made have included, how the Republican Party, how the Democratic Party gets votes, how authoritarianism in the United States has gotten people to actually back this Trump and Republican Party, even though they've lied, they've cheated, they have their own propaganda network and Fox fake news, and no one seems to care. We've gone from money being the base of everything, that hatred instigated by Trump's words, and he has made me hateful as well, it seems to win the day, rather than some respect for others, for honor, integrity. That seems to be just flushed down the toilet or put by the wayside, and that's wrong. I have also talked about Biden ending the 20-year war. That was the right thing to do. Some people think it was done too fast, but I think any time you try to get out of a position like that, there's going to be damage. And finally, these anti-abortion laws that Texas is pushing, and maybe other states will push as well, I believe have nothing to do about saving the fetus or that the fetus has rights. I believe it has everything to do with the Republican Party feeling they have to maintain a slave class because our nation is made up of many small businesses. And those small businesses, some believe that if you don't have a slave class or a minimum wage class, that those businesses can't survive. I believe they can, but that's possibly the basic gut feel that Republicans have these days. And based on the COVID-19 scenario, I believe that maybe Trump, being the sinister authoritarian person that he is, believes that by convincing the Republicans to not push masks when we didn't have a vaccine, or to not push vaccines, basically 80% of the people who have died, the 650,000 who have died, about 500,000 of them have been those getting Social Security. And I believe that he and some of the more sinister people in the Republican Party believe that this will keep Social Security going longer because they've killed off 500,000 people that were getting Social Security. So these kind of comments that I'm making, I've kind of built up over the last year of reading Heather Cox Richardson. So I suggest you do it, and it may provide you with some more insight as well. Thank you.